From the trails to the road to the track, if it's running, you'll find it right here on Trail Tales ARP. Run wild. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trail Tales, a running podcast. Sean Sobon here with you on this glorious day, June 1st, as we record. And I have the amazing ultra runner, Mike Mclean, the Honey Badger, and he is on Canadian soil. Last time we talked to Mike, he was in Thailand. But Mike, welcome back home to Canada for a little while anyways. You're here to run some races, and how's everything going with you?
Yeah, no, it's great to be back. Thanks, Sean. And yeah, had a nice Canadian welcome. I think it was my third or fourth day here. I got some snow, so that was nice. And then my second day here, I was able to get my double from Timmy's. So it feels good to be back in Canada and, doing the Canadian thing again for a little while.
There you go, man. I guess it's been a while since you had some Timmy's, eh?
Yeah, it's been a while. I was thinking about it before I came because I knew they would ask me at immigration, and it was just about 4 years to the day since I had been back in Canada. I came back in 2017 for my brother's wedding, and then went on my tour to Asia.
That's it. Well, long overdue. Welcome back home, buddy. And
thanks.
Yeah, so let's talk about why you're here. So you originally came over. You're going to be running the Sinister 7 Ultra. That's in July, if I'm correct.
Correct. That's July 10th, 11th, 12th, that weekend. The second weekend in July now.
Okay. And are you doing the 100-mile distance?
Yeah. So I'm here to do the 100-miler. A little bit of redemption. I did that race in 2017. I think it was my third or fourth ultra that I had ran. So I still wasn't to the level I am now, both in preparation and just race knowledge and everything else. And it was an incredibly hot day that day. I think it was one of the hottest days that race has ever ran. And I ran into some big electrolyte and hydration issues and ended up having to DNF after 80K because I was just, I was dehydrated, delirious. I was actually looking at some of the pictures the other day and they look hilarious because I've just got this glossy-eyed and his big smiling grin. I look like I'm just hammered, but I'm so dehydrated that, and now knowing that, it was like, okay, well, it's a good idea you decided to stop. So I got the opportunity this year to come back and, get some redemption on that race and then have a really good race on Canadian soil.
That's great, man. I guess, when you get to that point, there's no real coming back from that. So DNF is the smart thing to do. And it's funny how you say, you're hurting that bad and you still get a big smile on your face, eh?
Yeah. It's what you do when you love it. But yeah, exactly. And that's something I've learned. Hydration is one of the things that I don't mess with. I know the signals of my body, and as much as it sucks to come out of a race, it's even worse to end up in a hospital on IV or even worse, especially with your kidneys. You don't mess around with that stuff.
No, I agree. And the Honey Badger, he doesn't care if he's dehydrated. He's still going to be smiling.
Exactly. Honey Badger doesn't care. You just put on a smile and you say, okay, well, I learned some life lessons there. We won't do that next time. And I'll come get you this time. So
there you go.
Should be good. I'm really excited for it. I've had a really good training block leading up to it. Both with a lot of the hot weather and some really technical training I was doing in Thailand. And now that I'm back here, I'm getting some, long days on winding single tracks and getting some really good long distance bike rides in here. Cause there's not as much traffic on the roads here as there is in Thailand. So it's a little safer to ride a little longer distance on the bike. So getting a lot of training in, which is really good.
Absolutely. Do you like to do cycling for some cross training? Do you find that benefits you?
Yeah, I really do. I really use it. It's one of my recovery things. And the other thing I like to do is I like to do almost like brick sessions or stack runs. So I'll go out for a bike ride and then I'll just jump straight off the bike and go for a run. Because it's really good. It gets your cardiovascular system working really good, but it doesn't put the impact on. You can go for an hour and a half bike ride and then an hour run and you really train your cardio and that really well in your muscles, but you don't have the impact of going for a 3-hour run.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's almost like a secret weapon, eh? When you do that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's nice being back here. I'm not a big fan of road bikes and being on the road. You know, I like the mountain bikes and the gravel roads. So where I am is, you know, 19 kilometers from the nearest town. So it's just, there's one highway and the rest is gravel roads. So I've been skidding and skating and sliding around the gravel roads with my bike, having some fun.
Oh, that's good stuff, man. And when you can have fun while you're doing it, it doesn't even feel like work, eh?
Exactly. That's the biggest part to the training is you got to have fun. You know, yeah, it sucks. It's hard and you're going to put in the effort, but as long as you're enjoying it and it all pays off at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your training leading up to the race. So when did you start your training block for this Sinister 7 specifically?
So my training block started for this race. Well, I had been training for another race that was going to be in Thailand the
Okay.
weekend before that, which was going to be on the July 1st weekend, or I think it's the 3rd, 4th weekend, which is the West Wind Trail. And that's a 120-kilometer race, 6,000 meters of elevation. Your typical Thai jungle race, you know, straight up, straight downs. So I've been putting in a really good training block for that. But then about, I think it was 6-8 weeks ago, that race got postponed. I think it's postponed till December now, like a lot of the other races in Thailand. So then I started looking at some options, discussing some different things. And I thought, you know what, let's head back to Canada and we can go for the Sinister race. It needed some redemption. So really, I just rolled that training I had been doing for the 120K race into some of what I'm doing for the Sinister race. Because it was very similar, and not similar course profile, but it's almost the exact same elevation as that race. Is just another 40 kilometers longer. So I just needed to put in a little bit more weekly volume. And then obviously now that I'm here in Alberta, I'm focusing on race specifics. I like to train in the same terrain I'm going to race in and train the similar things. So this weekend, I'll be heading to the mountains in Crow's Nest. I'll spend, 3 days down there. Then I'll come back. I'll probably be every weekend, either in the mountains around Crow's Nest, Canmore, Grand Cache, getting that elevation training in as well. You know, I plan to do quite a few runs above 2,000, 2,500 meters if I can, just to get my body used to some of that stuff that you're not getting at sea level.
Yeah, yeah. So come race day, man, you should be feeling really strong and really conditioned, eh?
Hopefully that's the game plan. I work together with my coach. You know, we just go into it and then hope that come race day, I mean, I still got another 4 or 5 weeks of good training and then a week for tapering into the race, which is always the most dreaded week. I hate tapering.
Yeah, yeah. Is it just you just get you're jonesing to get out for a nice long run? Is that
yeah,
it?
yeah. You're just getting antsy, but yeah, if everything goes to plan, it should be a really good rest of my training block and hopefully hit that start line feeling fresh and ready to rock and roll.
Oh, sounds like a plan, Mike. I wanted to ask you, when you're preparing for a race like this, how much speed work do you incorporate into your weekly schedule? Is it something that you really do focus on, or are you just more focused on getting the miles in?
No, definitely speed work. I mean, ever since last year when we had our talk and I had that epiphany moment, with Eric and the
Yeah.
speed work and how much that plays into it. Speed work's always part of my training, minimum once a week and sometimes twice a week. So normally on Tuesdays, Tuesdays are generally a double day for me. So I'll do a track set in the morning where I try and lay down some really fast work there, some really good speed work, focus on form, and then I'll do a nice recovery, easy run in the afternoon. And then Thursdays for me will either be a tempo session or I do hills on that day. So I'll do my hill repeats and everything else. And, hill repeats are always a great, I consider them a form of speed work as well, because it's very similar leg turnover. When you're going up the hill, you're increasing your cadence, you're focusing on getting, your knees up high in your longer strides and just turn the legs over going up and down the hill. So that's generally my speed work training blocks. I really enjoy the speed work as well. It's kind of neat to be able to go that fast under human power, especially when you can really light it up on the track.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's and I guess it changes things up for you too, right? It's a nice day to look forward to, a little bit different than the rest of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is. It's a nice break in your training. It's short and it's very pointed. It's high heart rate and just boom, 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 versus the long slogs, which I quite like as well. But it's just very different.
Yeah.
They're night and day contrast from each other, but they both play together so well. And then going into race day, just having that knowledge that you do have that ace in the hole. If someone wants to have a drag race with you, then let's do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And I remember from our last conversation, you love getting into a nice drag race, eh? You're just like, just give her and go.
For sure, for sure. Nothing better, man. Nothing better than having that last 20K of just pure battle, and you're giving it everything, and you just hit that finish line, and you're just
Yeah, yeah. Give
shattered.
just leaving it all on the course, eh?
Yeah, exactly. There's no better feeling, both physically and mentally. The next
Yeah.
day kind of sucks, but oh well.
Yeah, that's all right. So when you're, let's still stick on to training here, but when you got a speed session coming up, the night prior, like, when we used to play hockey, I'm sure it was the same for you. Like the night before a game, you'd have like a big like pasta dinner or whatever, right? Like whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you doing that for your speed sessions too? Are you doing a little bit of carb loading like the night before your training session, or what do you do specifically for your nutrition there?
So I don't. I actually have found that I don't really modify my diet too much.
Okay.
One thing I do, I guess dietary wise for speed sessions, is I won't eat before I go into a speed session. So I go into it fasted. One is because when you're going that quickly, if you have anything in your stomach, I mean, me especially, it starts to kind of work its way up, and then
Sure.
either you're burping it up or letting it out on the side of the track, which isn't always nice.
Yeah,
And then I find going into that session fasted, you get a little bit more out of it because you're really, really taxing your glycogen storage. You're
absolutely.
really getting your body used to burning those calories. So it's storing them less, or it's storing them better in your muscles than it is if you're giving it easy to burn food, like if you just had a big meal before you get there. My long runs, definitely. I'll go into them with something to eat. Normally 200 to 300 calories. A great meal now that I'm back in Canada is a bagel and some peanut butter and some fruit.
Yeah.
You know, and away you go, 200, 300, 400 calories, an hour and a half, 2 hours before you run, and then you're good for a good long session. Otherwise, if you don't eat anything before those really long sessions, you start to kind of power out, even if you're taking gels and that, just because you've burnt a lot of your glycogen stores. So that's really what that's about. It's more just kind of challenging your body to run at its optimum efficiency.
Nice. It makes sense. And I guess, yeah, if you're doing the speed work and you're fasted, you are going to kind of train your body to be a little bit more efficient at utilizing what it has in the stores and everything,
Yeah.
and yeah, for the longer runs, you're just having some proper fuel to be able to perform for the entire session, I guess, eh? Good strategies there for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's just keeping the tank full, right? You take your gels, your drink mixes, whatever snack you're going to take on the trail, but those are always, they'll only top up the top third of the tank.
Yeah.
If you don't have that 2/3 of the tank full when you go into it, you're behind already. And for me, that normally is the week leading up to a really long run, especially to a race. I'm really conscious of what I'm eating, what I'm fueling the week leading up, to make sure that my body's primed and ready to go. I eat a lot of plant-based. So when I get closer to the race, I'm trying to get those good fats and those good carbs. Now that Thailand was lots of rice, here it's rice, lots of potatoes, avocados. That getting that kind of fuel into your body, getting it ready for the long burn, versus your really quick burning sugars, which your gels or anything you'll find in that you'll take out on the trail, that's just quick burning stuff that just sits in that top third of your tank. So you really need to go in having that good glycogen stores, proper fuels, ready to rock and roll.
Sounds good, man. And let's touch a little bit on hydration now. So you'd mentioned your first time around with the Sinister 7, you had some issues there.
Yeah.
What will be your strategy this time around? Are you going to be taking in fluids on like set intervals, or how are you planning on doing that?
Yeah, so I think then I didn't know my body as well as I do now. I didn't
Of
know I
course.
was hydrating and dehydrating and all the warning signs. One thing I have noticed on a lot of my runs here is you don't sweat. Like in Thailand, I'm just leaking. I mean, you could follow me on the trail by my sweat trails because I'm a very profuse sweater. But here, you generally tend not to sweat like that. My clothes aren't wringing wet, but that you're sweating and you're excreting the electrolytes and the fluid that's in your body. And I knew that. I did a nice long run on the Klondike Trail on the weekend, and I started to get all these salt rings. I could see the salt rings forming on my back. So I'm like, well, hey, I am sweating. I am excreting those electrolytes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very important to go away from the I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink philosophy to the I'm drinking on a time based, I'm taking my electrolytes on a time based. Before I didn't used to, like when I did that race, I was just water and like noon tablets and like everybody else does, you come into an aid station, you eat some pickles and you drink some pickle juice and stuff like that, which is all still really good stuff. And I quite enjoy that. But now I'm taking, like an electrolyte tab, and I generally take one of those every hour to hour and a half. And that's just full of all the salts you need. It's got your potassium, your sodium, magnesium, and then zinc's a really big one. I take, like it's Bix recovery tablets. I use those leading up to the race to make sure that you're at the right level with all these other minerals that you need in your body besides salt. We don't just need salt.
Yeah.
And if you can hit that balance right, it is perfect. Eating a lot of bananas as well, you need to keep that potassium level up. So that's really the biggest switch I've made is I'm thirsty, I'll drink, to I'm going to do it more on a time-based schedule, very similar to how I do my nutrition.
Nice. Smart idea, I think. And kind of like you alluded to, it's definitely a learning process because everybody is going to be different in how their body performs and what their needs are. So it's great to kind of, get some advice from an elite guy like you, just to see kind of what your strategies are. And, I think the takeaway here is for us who are listening is just to kind of experiment a little bit, see what works for you, see what doesn't, and definitely like, get a coach or get a nutrition expert too, to kind of help you out.
Yeah, for sure. It's just knowing your body and test it every long run. Test yourself. And that's where going into some of these runs, for example, fasted, really helps you. Or the other thing I'll do, I did a lot of to get to know my body is you need to know how much fluid you're actually losing. So weigh yourself before you go for a run and weigh yourself just after a run and actually see how much body weight you lost versus how much fluid you put in. And that'll be basically how much fluid you're actually excreting during that run. And that's, it's not necessarily the number, it's just knowing that ratio, because at the end of the day, ultras are a war of attrition. You can only take in so much water every hour. Otherwise, your body doesn't process it and you end up throwing it up all over the place and you're probably out of the race. And you can only take in so many calories every hour. And it's just trying to find those numbers for you. And that's really where my learning process was, is finding my number. So it is really great to get these bits of advice and get these tips and tricks and everything from elite athletes, nutritionists. There's a whole variety of people out there that really, really can help point you in the right direction. And then once you have this good base plan, it's just fine tuning it on your long runs, which is something I didn't do going into, my other ultras. I had never used any of my nutrition on my long runs. It's like, okay, hey, cool. This gel will work, or this one, you buy them at Race Expo and away you go.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest piece of advice I think I can give is, get a good base plan by researching it and then test it. And then you come into race day and you feel more confident as well when you're at the starting line. You're only worried about putting that foot in front of each other. You're not worried about, am I going to get PI?
Yeah, for sure. Great advice, Mike. Thanks so much for that. So Sinister 7, you're 100 miles. What kind of elevation are you looking at? What's the course going to be like? This is in the Rockies, right?
Yeah. So it's in southern Alberta in the Crow's Nest area. So there is some pretty decent elevation. I think the highest point along the course is 2,700 meters.
Okay.
So we're getting up there quite a ways. It's 100 miles and it's just over 6,000 meters of elevation gain.
Okay, so that's pretty high. So if ballparking, I guess you're looking at like 6,000 meters, like 18,000 feet, something like that. Is that?
Yeah, right in that. Yeah, right in there, 18,000 feet, 100 miles. So.
Okay, so I guess, you know, leading up to that, you said you're going to be heading out onto the trails and getting some elevation in. So is this going to be kind of your like acclimatizing training here to get used to that elevation?
Yeah, acclimatizing training, getting used to the elevation. I'm actually going to go run 3 legs of the race, or 3.5 legs of it, just so you get to know the trails and get to know the terrain. I mean, it's know your foe, right? And if you can do that, you know, it's not always practical, but if you can do that, train on the actual terrain you're going to run or very similar, it's so much beneficial come race day, because you can kind of turn the mental meter down a little bit, you know, and because you know the area and you know certain things and you're a little more in tune to your body then, because you're paying less attention to, did I miss a turn, you know, how far is it to this point, that point, and this point. And then you can, you know, doing it far enough out like this, doing it 5 weeks in advance, for me, gives me a time to adjust some of my training. So I'll get to see, you know, how good am I at going up some of these really long climbs. You know, that's one thing you don't get in a lot in Thailand. You get really steep climbs, but normally they're 1-2 kilometers like this straight up the hill, and then you're bombing down on the other side. Whereas here you're spending a lot less time at higher inclination, but you're just going up and up and up and up and up. So just getting adjusted to that, and I'll see how my training leads up to that.
Nice. So for these longer climbs, are you going to be using poles?
No, I won't be. Lots of people do. And there again, I think it's just a personal preference thing.
Sure.
For me, that they're not steep enough with enough elevation that I really want to focus on using poles. So I just train to go with it. Certain races I do, and certain races I don't. And it's just one of those, again, personal preference things. And I think the best bit of advice I've ever been given about poles was given to me by elite ultra runner, Harry Jones. And I asked him about poles when I was just getting into it. I said, how do you know when to use poles? He said, look at the elite runners. If the elite runners have poles in their bag, put your poles in your bag. If they don't. And it all just depends what you're looking at, right? If you're looking to be a completer and just get out there and complete the course, then I would definitely recommend taking poles to Sinister 7, because they really do help you if you're at that, you know, that I think I can, just that constant grinding pace, that they really help, you know, take some stress off your lower legs. And there again, the other thing about poles, if you're going to use them, train with them. Don't come into race day having not ran a long run with them or having not used them, because they do change your body mechanics a little bit. And I've seen some really great ultra runners DNF in big races like UTMB because they've had hip flexor issues or lower back issues because they weren't used to using poles. Then they went and used poles, and it changes your gait and your cadence just enough that if you're constantly pounding with it, eventually something's going to pop up.
Man,
so
that's
there again. If you're going to use them, train with them.
That's such a great advice. You're right. And it's almost like nutrition, right? You don't want to try anything new on race day. So like you just said, I wouldn't even have thought of that. Yeah. If you're going to use poles on the race, it makes absolute sense to train with them as well, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, man. So just before we started recording, you had mentioned you actually have a bit of a schedule of races coming up too, right? So you're kind of doing like the Tour de Canada here, which is pretty awesome. I think you're making the best of your time here. So what else have you got lined up?
Yeah, no, for sure. I thought, you know, I'm here, and there's so many great races in Canada, and you know, some great organizers and that. So I thought, I'm here, I might as well do the Tour de Canada, as you say. So I'm going to do the Sinister 7, and then not quite 3 weeks later, I'm going to do the Canadian Death Race. But I'm not going to do the full distance event there. I'll just do the near death marathon, they call it, which is 42 Ks.
Yeah.
And 42 Ks, and I think it's 2,500 to 3,000 meters of elevation. So it's a pretty intense marathon. It's not your typical road marathon. And that's just because I wouldn't have had enough recovery time, to put in a good run at 125K. So that I'd go do the 42K and just have some fun and be there and be part of the race atmosphere. I might even go volunteer at some aid stations and do some other things after I finish my run, just to be part of the race atmosphere in the team and help things out. And then I'm going to head to the UTHC in La Malbaie later on in September. And I will run the full distance there. I'll run the 125K event there. So I'll be heading down there as one of the race headliners. That's a race that I had originally had lined up, I think in 2017 as well. I was supposed to go run that race. But then I couldn't go because we were in Houston and Hurricane Harvey had hit. So flights were canceled and everything else. And then, 3 months later, I was back in Asia. So it's a race that's always been on my bucket list. It looks like a really beautiful place. And they have 7 or 8 different race distances. So it's just a really good event and a good timing to go to it. I thought, I'm here, so I might as well get involved in some of these great races. And it's the only stop on the Ultra Trail World Tour in Canada as well.
So that'll be a pretty exciting race, and I'm sure the field of competition will be pretty good there too, eh?
Yeah, definitely. I think it will be at all the races. I mean, that's the the great part about coming back here as well is get back into some really competitive running. Not that it wasn't competitive in Thailand, but just with the restrictions and that, and I think ultra running has had longer to prosper here in Thailand. So you got a bigger field of closer competition. So I'm really looking forward to it, getting back out there on the trails and having these good dog fights. I love that. There's nothing better than 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people just pushing themselves all out all day on the trails.
Yeah, it sounds pretty grueling, but exciting at the same time, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. So going back to the Sinister 7, do you know how many runners are going to be competing at this race and kind of how they're going to start you off and everything?
So the last I had seen is they were up around 200 in the 100 mile. And I think this year will be the first year. They do have a 50-mile event as well. And they also have the relay race. So They do, I think it's teams of 5 that run basically 25 miles each, or around in that. So there'll be quite a few runners there. I think they've got several different plans in the works, and it's just going to be whichever one is allowable by the government regulations at that time. I mean, they've got a plan in for wave starts and all that if the regulations don't change. They have lightened here in Alberta as of June 1st. So they'll be able to start a few more people in waves. They have a really good plan in place for aid stations, transition areas, and stuff like that. So it'll be a little interesting. The wave starts will always be the interesting thing, especially if, I don't think the race will be that close, potentially, that wave starts matter, but it could be. So, theoretically, you could be the first person to cross the finish line. But if someone started 20 minutes behind you and then they're only 10 minutes behind you crossing the finish line, then technically they have just, won the race. So it could make for some interesting endings in the race. I don't know exactly how far apart they're starting people in that. But I know Brian and his team at Sinister Sports have a really good plan in place. They've been really good at keeping racers updated. There's always updates on the Facebook site. So we're not going to go to race day and have something unexpected at the start line shoot and be like, oh, no, because that's the worst thing that can happen. You're all set. You're ready to go. And they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, we're only going to start you 5 at a time. It's like, really, guys?
Yeah.
So their plans are all in place and we're all kept updated on it. So I think it's just going to depend. I mean, and obviously they're like all the rest of us. We hope to have a race as close to pre-pandemic normal as we can, because that's the fun part. It's that being together at that starting shoot feeling, and then, you know, the pre-race suppers and check-ins and getting to chat with everybody, and then the post-race stuff and being able to get into transition areas and actually talk to the people and enjoy it, and they're not handing you your drink on a little stick and going, you know, here, take your water and get.
Yeah, so true. It's almost like when you're at Tim Hortons, they hand out the debit machine and the drinks. It all comes in this tray, and like, take it and go.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's, you
Yeah.
know, we've become new uses. I mean, the only time you ever used to see them little squeezable claws was when people were picking garbage. Now we use them to hand everything to
Right.
people. It's like, you know, I understand it, but I'm really waiting to get back to, you know, the normalness of it, because that's the fun part of a race. That's what makes a race for me, you know, being able to go into aid stations and, you know, chat it up with the volunteers, and okay, maybe we can't high five, but, you know, at least you can chat it up, and then we can both see each other smiling because we don't have masks and face shields and
Yeah.
nothing else, you know. And if it happens, it happens. I mean, if I have to wear a mask in transition areas, then I have to wear a mask. I'll do what I need to do to race and comply with it to make sure that everybody has a safe and fun time. But obviously, it's more enjoyable if we can get closer to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the dynamics on race day and leading up to it that you can't capture that anywhere else, whether, you know, you're running a virtual or whatever else it may be.
Yeah,
Like that's the huge draw, I think, to doing these events and signing up for these races, just the
for sure.
camaraderie and you know, the people there. It just really makes the event that much more special. It almost makes the race like, you know, secondary. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna run a race.
Definitely. And then that's really what drew me to ultras. It is that ultra family, I call it. And it's really
Yeah.
cool. And any trail race, no matter what distance, you know, if you're running 100 miles or you're there for the 10K fun run, you're all still socializing together, and you're just having, you know, very interested in the sport and talking to each other. And that definitely makes a race. But as I say, I think, you know, a lot of people are respectful enough and just looking to get racing that we'll do whatever we have to do to make sure that event is safe and fun for everybody, abiding by whatever regulations are out there.
Yeah.
You know, and if that kind of stuff is really, and that's another thing I would say to people, if that kind of stuff really stresses you out, that you might have to do these things or might have to comply with these regulations, most of the races out there are offering deferral options. You know, as much as I want to see people at the starting line, if you're not going to be there and enjoying it because you're worried about having to wear a mask or do something at a transition area that you don't want to do, then just defer it to next year, and hopefully that it clears up, because you're probably not going to enjoy it. And, you know, and either that or just focus on what you can control. I can't control what any government body is going to do. All I can control is how I'm going to react to that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And, you know, I think from what I've heard, you know, all the race directors out there, no matter what series it is, they've been really good at, you know, offering deferrals to people because of cancellations
Yeah.
or restrictions or whatever. Right. So yeah, that's some great advice too, because you want to be able to enjoy it. Right. And everybody's different.
Yeah. Exactly, and everybody's different. So if it's going to be a stressor for you, you don't need extra stressors on race day. Running an ultra is enough stress that you don't need anything else in your mind. So you know, think about it and maybe take those options, or just give it a little different mindset. Like, you know what? Hey, I'm getting to race again. It doesn't matter if you make me wear a face shield, you know, the whole way. Well, it's really going to suck, but you know what? If I really want to race, I'll probably figure out a way to make it enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice, man. Great advice from the honey badger.
And at the end of the day, exactly, honey badger don't give a shit.
That's it, man. Now, I want to ask you now. So, you know, running in the jungles of Thailand versus, you know, running in the mountains in the province of Alberta. What are the bug situations like, right? Like July here, especially, like, you know, the bugs should probably be in full swing. Like black flies might be gone. I don't know what it's like out there, but I know over here in the summer months, man, you got the deer flies, and those things are just brutal. They're like tanks. You got to hit them at least 3 times to kill them if you're fast
Yeah.
enough. So what's that going to be like for you?
So for me, it's a nicer situation. I mean, that was actually one of the questions I was asked in Thailand when I was come back here. Everybody's concerned about the bears, and they're like, "Oh, aren't you worried about running with the bears and the bigger animals, right?" And I said, "No, not really. I'm more concerned about all the venomous, creepy crawlies you have in Thailand, right? A lot of the bugs, plants, snakes." that live in the jungles of Thailand, they either bite you, poke you, stab you, whatever they do. It's not going to be a fun day. If you get bit by a snake in Thailand, the likelihood of it being a fairly venomous snake is pretty high. Same with some of the bugs. They got some really nasty bugs that just one bite is, not nice. Whereas here, yeah, we have the mosquitoes and the deer flies and the ticks, but you can prepare yourself for that. And one of the things I've actually found that works really well, and I've discovered that in Thailand, is just sunscreen or sun lotion. It works really well for me. One, because I burn, because I'm, the ginger-haired, fair-skinned guy. So I have it on most of the time anyways. But I find it just puts that thin coating on your body that insects and bugs, they just don't like to land on or be on.
Nice.
Obviously, when you're moving, it's a little better. When you stop at transition areas, it'll probably be a little bit more of a pain. But as long as you're prepared for it, it's okay. And, bears are bears. I don't worry about them too much here. I prepare for it. I carry a bear banger with me, which is basically a pen flare that just makes a big noise. I prefer that over bear spray. But again, my advice on that is whatever you're going to carry, if you're going to carry something, whether it be a bear banger or bear spray, know how to use it. Be versed in using it. It's no good to pull something out that you have no idea how to use. It's it makes no sense. So just be versed in using it. And since I've been here, I've seen one bear, and it was a small little 2-year-old black bear. And I just gave a holler and it took off. It was way more scared of me than I was of it. So it's just, again, they're very similar. When you're on the trails, pay attention to your surroundings. You don't want to step on a snake in the middle of the trail of Thailand. You don't want to come around the corner and have a black bear in the middle of the trail in Alberta either. So make some noise, sing to yourself, yell out every couple of, 100 meters, just give a yell, a holler, hoot and holler, have some fun on the trails and just make things aware that you're out there. And generally you won't see anything. They'll be gone before you get there.
Yeah.
And then obviously here, especially in Alberta and you guys, I think the biggest one I worry about is probably ticks, because they'll get on you and they'll kind of burrow in and go in deep. And then, you won't see them for a few days until they get about as big as a toonie. So just check yourself after you're done running, take your socks off, check your socks, check your shoes, check your body. They like to get into behind knees and in the back of your neck and elbows. And so just, do a thorough tick check basically when you're done, and you should be all right. So it really doesn't change a lot of what I do. It just changes what I'm paying attention for. And I would rather pay attention for large black and brown things that are much easier to spot than, a 2-foot snake that's laying in the middle of the trail that's just about the same color as the vegetation.
Yeah, exactly, man. I'm with you on that one. I for one cannot stand snakes. I used to like when I was a kid. We used to go collect them and pick them up, and I had an incident with one. It wasn't even a live snake. It was one that got met its end by, I guess, a big field mower. I was riding my bike through the field, and then I guess part of the body got caught up and hit me on the inside of my thigh. And that was, ever since then, man, I get the heebie-jeebies. It's the startling aspect. You don't see them till the last minute and then they move, and it's just like, I don't like it. Don't like it anymore.
No.
But
exactly.
Yeah, but hearing your comparisons of what it's like in Thailand versus here, I think I definitely choose the pests here in Canada, because they sound like they're, save for the bears. I mean, and even getting attacked by a black bear is going to be super rare, but the stuff here is more of an annoyance, whereas the stuff in Thailand, I think, can probably lead to some trouble for you.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And a lot of, and that's just the way it is, when you get into these tropical climates, more things they're more adapted to survive and hunt in those climates where things are more abundant. So they're pretty much more venomous than they are here. Everything spends all of its efforts and energy on staying warm and staying fed here versus defense and everything else, mechanisms that you need in the jungle. So it's just different adaptations. And, it just gives you, as I say, it's just a different contrast, but I feel a little bit more at ease and can focus on things a little bit more here on the trails, where I'm looking a little further ahead and just what's coming next on the trail versus doing more of a closer foot scan of am I going to step on a snake or something. So it's just adjusting to where you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
They both have their benefits. They both have their downsides. It's just like anything. But, relative comparison, it's just pay attention to your surroundings and know what you could or couldn't run into and be prepared for it.
Yeah, very good, very good. I want to ask you a little bit about temperatures now. So when you're starting out and you get to your peak elevation around 18,000 feet or 6,000 meters, are you expecting to have significant change in temperature when you get up that high?
Definitely, it's going to be quite a change. So it's all going to depend on what it starts on race day, but it's still going to be a big change. I mean, the year I ran, and so I didn't get into the really high elevation parts of Sinister, but definitely, I mean, down on the ground, the year I ran it, it was 29, 30 degrees. And even up at some of the other elevations, it had almost dropped 5 to 10 degrees. And to put that in comparison versus like the Canadian Death Race, the year I ran and completed that one, 2018, I think it was very similar. So it was 26, 27 degrees when we started in Grand Cache. And by the time we got up to the top of Mount Hamel, it was 3 and 4 degrees and trying to snow.
Wow.
And that's on August long weekend. So it's just really about being prepared for that as well. And I mean, we had the unfortunate tragedy here in China a couple of weeks ago. Where we lost 21 runners and really great elite runners. And it's just focused people's attention on be prepared and be self-reliant. Don't rely on race directors to tell you what you should or shouldn't have in your pack.
Yeah.
Know your foe. Know what you could or couldn't run into. And especially in the Rockies, the Canadian Rockies, it can change in 15 minutes. It can go from 25 degrees to 5 degrees and snowing in a blink of an eye. So just be prepared for it. And that's really how I'll go about it as well. I would like if it was quite hot. I think that gives me an edge over some of the other competitors, maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
I've been heat training for months, so you could give me 35-degree temperatures and it wouldn't bother me too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus the colder temperatures, I still haven't quite got used to it. I think this is the first morning that I've been out with a t-shirt. Although it was funny, the other day I was in my hometown and went to get a coffee at Tim Hortons, and people are in there with shorts and t-shirts on. And I had debated when I left the house, should I just wear a hoodie or should I wear a hoodie and a jacket? So it's just that contrast to what people are used to, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's
absolutely.
wearing their summer clothes here and I'm still barely shedding my winter layer.
No kidding. Eh? You're probably looking for the long johns in the local store. Eh? Where's the long john?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. So I want to ask, when it comes to the changes in the climate with the elevation, would you say it's better to be a little bit over prepared rather than under prepared like that? And what kind of things are you going to take with you? I guess depending on forecasts and temperatures and things like that.
Yeah. Definitely over prepared is way better than under prepared. And one thing I would say is if you're going to cheap out on gear, don't cheap out on there's a couple things not to cheap out on. One is running shoes and the other is cold weather gear. If you're going to buy it and bring it for a race, make sure it's good stuff. I see a lot of people, like UTMB is a prime example, where they've put in all kinds of regulations of what gear has to be, and it has all the technical specs of what it has to be, because people would buy something that met the requirements. But like long leg trousers, right? People would come with a pair of pantyhose. Is that really going to help you when it's cold? No, it's not. It's a long leg trouser, yes, but it's not going to help you. So get good cold weather gear. And if you get good cold weather gear, if you're going to pack it, buy some decent stuff. It's a little bit more expensive, but there's some really good stuff out there now, especially at much better prices. And then it becomes much lighter as well. If you get the good stuff, it's lighter, it's easier to pack.
There you go.
If you're going to pack your old 1980s winter parka, yeah, it's going to suck carrying it around. But you can get a really nice, light, thin shell down jacket that weighs 30 grams and it'll go in your bag and it'll keep you warm. And layers. Don't just rely on one piece. Take several layers. And that's really what I do. So just depending on what the race is to start and is to finish, I'll always be prepared. in between. And what I would say is always pack most of that stuff in your bag. And, you know, a good bivy, I mean, you can't, a bivvy's a thing you should have. You know, a lot of the packs now come with those little square packages, you know, basically the aluminum foil kind of blankets. Those are nice, but you can go get some really good bivvies like from Mountain Equipment Co-op or some of these other stores. And they're not much heavier, but the insulating factor in them is way better. So it's just more peace of mind of having that. And you know what, as a good ultra runner and as a good trail ambassador, a lot of times it's not even for you. You know, if you see someone else struggling, then it's great to have that stuff in your pack. You know, if you can stop and be of assistance to another runner, then that's, you know, what we're here for as well. So I always pack a little bit more. You know, I'm not one of the, I think my pack is probably would be one of the heavier ones out of the elite runners. I'm not a, you know, super light and fast guy. I'd rather be more prepared and worry about packing an extra 100 grams in my pack, you know.
Yeah.
For me, that's how I look at it. If 100 grams is going to make or break my race, then I haven't trained properly going into it.
Yeah, sage advice from the honey badger himself. I love it. And you know, I'm sure if you come upon you know, a fellow runner who's going to need some help and you're able to assist them in any way if they were underprepared, they're really going to appreciate that as well. Eh?
Yeah, they'll appreciate, you'll appreciate it, and it just makes everyone's time, you know, so much better. And that's what we're out on the trails for. You know, yeah, we're out there to be competitive, but it's a family. So anytime you get a chance to help someone else out, then, you know, it feels good. And nothing would be worse for me than coming up on somebody and not being able to help them because I wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
You know, you just, yeah, you'd feel pretty shitty about that.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I want to ask, you know, come back to Canada after an absence of about 4 years. You pick up your Timmies. Have you rediscovered any other beverages you haven't been able to have for a while?
Yeah, a few. Canada Dry Ginger Ale.
There you go.
It's another one. Haven't been able to get that for a while. Not too much else. I haven't been out and you know, as restrictions and things have been in place, you know, it hasn't been out too much. I can't wait to go get a huge, massive plate of poutine.
There you
know,
go.
I grew up on. I grew up on rink food. You know, I was in the hockey rink all the time. So those kind of things really have that nostalgic memories on me. But it's just been a really good difference coming here, you know, getting a lot of that, you know, things that I really missed that were really expensive over in Thailand were like the fresh berries, you know, blueberries, strawberries, you know, I can't wait till the Saskatoons start coming out here in Alberta and stuff like that. Whereas I could get them in Thailand, but they were so expensive and they were really poor quality. But it's the inverse here. So I go to the grocery stores here and, you know, you look at the mangoes and some of the other fruits like that I love in Thailand and eat all the time and cost you next to nothing. Here, you know, you almost have to mortgage your house to buy them and they're really poor quality. So it again, it's just that trade-off. So I've gone from eating a lot of mangoes to eating a lot of strawberries and blueberries now.
There you go. Well, now you mentioned Saskatoons. What's that? I've never heard of that other than the place.
So yeah, no. So it's basically, it's a tree berry. So it's a tree, and it's very similar to a blueberry. It's almost like a blueberry. I think they're native to Alberta, Saskatchewan. They're kind of a prairie tree. And you pick the berries off a tree. And then I just had, it just brings back so much of my youth. I used to go out there with my grandma all the time and we'd go Saskatoon picking. So we'd go find the trees and pick the berries off, and then she'd come home and make the pies. So, you know, it's more of that. I've been reconnecting with a lot of the stuff from that, memories from my youth, you know, and that was running the Klondike Trail last weekend was one of those, because I remember going out there every year, raising horse ride with my mom and dad and a whole bunch of other people. They organized a horse ride that used to raise funds for Multiple Sclerosis Canada. And it was, you know, you'd go out there, you'd ride your horses for 25 kilometers, you'd stop, you'd have a little bit of a picnic, and then you'd ride it back. So I ran that exact same trail the other weekend and did very similar thing. My mom and dad met me at the 25 kilometer mark. We had a little picnic and then I ran back. So it was a lot of nostalgia involved in the run as well as a good training run. So it's been really nice to enjoy some of that and, you know, just see some of the family members and get some of the Canadiana that I had been missing.
Oh, I bet, man. Certainly sounds like you're making the most of your time here, and that's so great to hear, man. Happy for you to be able to experience all
Yeah.
that, and for your family too. I'm sure they've missed you quite a bit.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely, especially, you know, the brothers and then their kids. So I'm getting to see my nieces and nephews and then
Yeah,
mom and dad a little bit more. So it's great.
that's awesome, man. But before we finish off here, Mike, you wanna say something to your wife and kids back home in Thailand?
Yeah, hey guys, Hayden, Mason, Lexi. Um, Hope you guys are doing well. You know, I'm talking to them every day, so it's great. Technology is amazing. You know,
Yeah.
I FaceTime with them every morning, every evening. We're 13 hours time difference, so it's great. My night is their morning. My littlest, my girl Lexi, she just thinks that's great. I'm having supper while she's eating breakfast, and she goes, "How does that happen?" You know, it's really good. So, and you know, they're keeping busy now. Restrictions are coming off in Thailand, so they're back playing football, basketball, all their team sports. So, you know, it sucks being away, but they understand that, you know, dad's got some bigger purposes for being away as well, and they're so
Yeah.
supportive that it's just great. So hi guys. Hope you guys are having fun.
Daddy misses you, and he'll be home sooner than you know.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It goes by pretty quick. I think the only time that didn't go by very quickly here was the 3 days I had to spend in a hotel in Vancouver. You
Yeah.
know, the initial arrival quarantine. I think I wore a nice strip in the carpet out of the hotel. And
That's right. So you landed in BC, then you made your way over to Alberta.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So landed in BC, you have to do the mandatory 3-day kind of quarantine on arrival at the government hotel, and then you're allowed to transit back to your place of isolation, and then you self-isolate for a few days, and then on day 8 you do at-home COVID test, which was kind of neat. Had a nurse on my computer watching me do my test, and then you send it in the mail,
Nice.
and then you get that result back, and 14 days later you're free to enjoy. So
Beautiful. Did you have to do a test before you left home in Thailand, or?
yeah, so I had to do one before I left, no more than 72 hours before boarding my flight to Canada. And then I had to do one on arrival in Vancouver. So you
Nice.
get off the plane, you go through customs, immigration, get your bags, and then you stop straight and you get a COVID test. And that's what you're waiting at the hotel for. So you have to wait there to get those results.
Yeah, yeah, 3 days is about the turnaround. That's right. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
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 So I want to ask too quickly. You said, going back to the equipment, you said you don't want to chintz out on anything. So talk about shoes, man. So you got traction. What are you going to be running in for these races?
So this is another good thing about the test runs or these recce's I'm going to do, because I do kind of remember some of the terrain, but I don't remember it all. So I'll be taking my full complement of Scott shoes there, and I'll probably be trying out a different pair in different sections and different days. And then I'll just see what works best with me. You know, I ran with my Kinabalu Ultra RCs on the flat 50K run, and they work just great. You know, they have just enough traction. They have a little bit more cushion, and they're more of a speed demon. So they were great on the trail there. And then I've also got, you know, my Super Track 2s and a few other weapons up my sleeve that I'll be, you know, using and testing on the trails just to make sure I get the right combination. And I usually never change my shoes throughout the race. I just don't like taking them off.
Yeah.
And I sometimes change a pair of socks if they're really wet or I really need to change. But generally, I'll keep the same shoes on just so you don't introduce a potential new stress or new difference to your feet. So I really want to find what shoe is going to work for the whole race. If I have to sacrifice in a couple kilometers of a section, then that's fine, as long as it's, you know, so I want to find a shoe that's good for 70% of the course.
Yeah.
If I have to give up 30%, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and pretty sound strategy, I think, for sure there. Also, we can't talk without giving a shout out to Eric Boom back in Thailand and Effortless Running, and it's been pretty exciting there. Now you're coaching with Effortless Running right now, and you guys have been doing a bunch of group runs and stuff there, which is great. I've been following that on Facebook and on Instagram, and you guys just got like a performance lab set up. What's that all about? Give us the scoop on
Yeah,
that.
so it was getting set up, everything was going good, and then the restrictions came in that
Sure.
gyms and fitness facilities couldn't be open, so he had to run it, and we had to run it doing a bunch of we could do private bookings, and as long as it was really well monitored and managed, we could have people in. But now, as of June 1st, so today, it's the restrictions are off, gyms are open back up, so it'll be going full swing, and it's really great. It's something I think that Phuket and Thailand was really missing, was it's a focus on performance. Right, we've got the top of line treadmills, top of the line video running analysis. So if you're a runner and you want to go, and it's for all denominations of runner, if you're looking to do the couch to 5K, I think it's good to go in there and get a basis and get some starting. But it also fits those elite runners that are looking to gain that extra 1 or 2%, whether it's in how you train, or how you just in your stride, in some running economy. We've also got a strength and conditioning coach, Sally, that's going to be in there doing strength and conditioning sessions, because I think that's a big part of it that runners sometimes tend to forget.
Oh, yeah.
We just run. We never do strength and conditioning exercises. So it's really exciting. Unfortunately, I'm not there for a lot of it, but, technology allows you to do a lot of things, away in that. And then moving to the next, I think we're looking to try and get a hypoxic room there as well.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So basically we can, suck out the air of the room and then crank up the elevation to whatever we want. So we can have you running on a treadmill in the Himalayas if you really want to. I think that's just going to bring that extra edge of training. And I think that's just more for me and Eric to have some new toys to play with versus anything, right? As we kind of like all that kind of stuff too. So it is great. And yeah, the group runs are starting again. They kind of went during some of the pandemic, but then it just got to be that restrictions were too much. And it's more of a risk thing, right? You don't want to be that guy that ruins it for everybody else because something happens on one of your group runs. So they were kind of paused for a little bit, but now he'll be kicking them off back full steam. I'm going to look to do a few things here in my hometown. I've been reaching out to some people. My mom was a teacher for 35 years at the local school here. So I've reached out to a few teachers. I might go in and do some stuff for some PE classes and a few things like that, because now that it's summer, they're starting to get the running season and that going, and just trying to pique people's interest in our sport and letting them know, how good of a lifelong hobby and, health benefit running can be. And I think people take it for granted here. They have this wide open spaces to run, and nobody does run. Nobody walks to the neighbor's house. Nobody runs to the neighbor's house. Nobody even bikes to the neighbor's house. Everybody gets on an ATV or in their truck and goes, So if I can get a few more people interested in saying, hey, you know what, my friend's only 2 kilometers away, why don't I just jog over there? That would be awesome if I hear kids talking like that. So that's kind of my aim. Some of the other side projects, racing, my training, that's the forefront, but obviously just to keep my time busy and stuff like that, I would love to get in and doing some stuff with the schools. I really like youth sports and then helping mentor youth, and that when I was living here before, I was coaching youth hockey and things like that, so I quite enjoyed that stuff. So that's kind of where I look to evolve some of my effortless focus too.
That's awesome, man. Being a great ambassador, not only for just healthy living, but for ultra running as well. And sharing that, it's really, I look at it as a gift, right? Like running is a gift that we all have access to. So to be able to share that with the youth and stuff, you could plant some seeds right now and watch them grow away.
Oh, for sure. It completely changed my life. 5-6 years ago, being the overweight, unhappy, eating bad, drinking lots, and to where I am now, it's just like, wow. And I'm just so happy and full of life every morning I wake up. If I can share that with, if I reach out to 1,000 people and even 2 or 3 people take it on, then, hey, then I've done good. And that's really how I look at it.
Yeah. And you know what? I find it so inspiring too, because in the grand scheme of things, you haven't been at this for that long, but to see where you're at now compared to where you were a short time ago is phenomenal. And it gives a lot of inspiration and hope to guys like me. And I'm sure everybody else listening. It's really amazing, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for that. And that's really all I can hope to is, just inspire people. And if people have any things, all my info will be in your podcast when it's released. To get in touch with me, drop me a DM, drop me a message. I love talking to people, giving people tips and tricks, or letting them know what worked for me or how I did it. Not necessarily it'll work for everybody, but that's the goal of it. And I think especially now with all of this stuff that's happened with the pandemic and everything, I think mental health, we're seeing this huge barrage of mental health issues. Running can help with that so much, or any type of exercise, because it's just that release. It gets that endorphins, you get that dopamine going, you just have that feel good moment.
Yeah.
And especially if you do it correctly. If you do it wrong, you go out too fast, too hard, yeah, it's going to suck. You're going to get shin splints, or you're going to get sore hips, and all of the stuff that comes with that. So that's really where I want to help people as well. I want to get people into this sport, whether it's to be competitive or just for healthy. And that could be physical and mental health. Because I think that's the biggest untouched faux pas still in the world. And, especially in the pandemic, is mental health.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Some great final thoughts from the Honey Badger himself, Mike Mclean, back on Canadian soil. Mike, I have one last thing to say to you, buddy, and that is to run wild, my friend.
Awesome. Run wild, Sean. It's awesome chatting with you again. And yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, we'll have to get you back on in between the races and get some updates and stuff if you're willing.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's always great chatting with you, and love to get out to all your listeners. I think you got a great community that you're starting to build, and it's a real inspiration to just get myself out there. So definitely, I'm available anytime, man.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it, and thank you very much, Mike.